Can't say that now.
Welcome, everyone, to the Ultimate Client Strategy Podcast. My name's Lisa Rosenthal, and I'm joined by my partner and co-founder, Bruce Libman. Today, our colleague and dear friend, Mike DiDonato, joins us from Navigator Consulting. Welcome, Mike.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mike, Lisa and I obviously know you very well, all right? But we want other people to know you too. That's why we're doing this, all right? So could you please tell us your story, how you got into this, and what is it that this is? Explain your value to the marketplace.
Well, first, what I do is that I'm a commercial real estate broker. And unlike a lot of my competitors, I represent tenants rather than representing the landlord. And the purpose of that is to really level the playing field for the tenants. Most tenants go into, when they seek office space, they're at a great disadvantage. Our business, although they refer to it as a marketplace, it's a very inefficient marketplace. It's unlike the stock market. It's unlike the grocery store. You don't know exactly, what the costs are and how things are kind of like, I'm not going to say hidden, but it, as the nature of our business is that it is, you don't ask, you don't get, and no one reveals too much. It's very passive aggressive type of business. But with that said, I'm a commercial real estate broker that, as I said, represent tenants. But what's interesting, people say, well, how are you paid? And this is what really is the conflict here. They say, well, landlords pay you, so how can you represent our interests? And I said, well, landlords are glad to pay me because either I retain you in their building or I locate you to their building. But more importantly, what I do for my tenant clients is create competition for their tenancy. Regrettably and unfortunately, most small businesses that seek office space aren't as sophisticated in the business. That every 5 or 10 years, they go out looking for office space, and that doesn't allow them, be able to retain the information that they had the last experience. So what I try to do, as I mentioned, is bring to them the idea and understanding of what they need to know and what their alternatives are. Because when we negotiate, it's called BATNA, your best alternative to the negotiated agreement. And regrettably and unfortunately, most tenants, they fall for the first sign they see on the road, and they'll go in and they'll negotiate a lease and go in, but that may not be the best space for them. They may not get the best terms and conditions. So what I do is I create competition. Typically, I will show an average tenant 7 to 10 office buildings. And of those 7 to 10, we'll get down to probably a short list of 3. And now we have competition. And I advise my clients that if no one is competing for your tenancy, you're not negotiating. You won't be able to negotiate. You'll be capitulating. And so what I do is I try to have these landlords then negotiate amongst them, themselves for the rights of that tenant. And usually what's very important about that is that we start, when I work with the tenant, taking a step back, is that I try to define what they need. And what's curious is that most office tenants and industrial, but most tenants, they always know when their space is too small. They bump into things that just don't fit right and such like that. But today they really recognize that their space is too large. And that's what I sit down with them and we first do a space program. And a space program basically is just an analysis of what their space needs happen to be. Like, for example, years ago, the standard cubicle was 6 by 8 or 8 by 8. Today it's 5 by 7. That's a big difference. The office space, it's like a private office, for example. Usually they used to become, people would just make offices 16 by 16. Today 10 by 12 works. Why does it work? Because believe it or not, technology has taken over, and the technology has, since we're digitized, we don't need as much surface area. We don't need as much file space. That's why in cubicles, cubicles right now, what you need is 2 screens, and a laptop. Books, papers, they're obsolete. You don't need them anymore. So what happens? I focus on trying to have the people get the most efficient space, because it's a really lousy investment to have extra office space, at whatever it is, $30, $40 a square feet. You're carrying, 500 square feet, more than you need, $20,000 a year. That's something else. So that's the first thing I do, is define the requirement. And once we define the requirement, then we go out and we see which is the best office space for them, what's the best building. And the other thing is that not every landlord is created equal. There are good landlords, and let's say there's not so good landlords. And what people forget is that they always look at the square footage of their space and they look at the cost per square foot, but they don't look at the credibility, reliability, and accountability of who they're going to be doing business with. And putting, their business in the hands of someone that is, let's say, doesn't deliver like they should or doesn't deliver as their competitors can put you at a great disadvantage. And the reason why I say it's disadvantage is that I speak to people and I tell them, listen, we're going to design office space for you. And I get involved in the design also. And the purpose of designing a space is office space is a factory. They say, what do you mean factory? How's it a factory? Well, it's a factory of minds. People have to work. They want to come to work, especially nowadays, with the work from home type of consideration. People need to want to come to work. You have to earn their commute for them to come to work. And so what I spend a lot of time in is not only the efficiency of the space, but also the design of the space, make sure it works properly. And like, for example, a lot of, especially attorneys, they always like to have these, let's call these monumental conference rooms. But conference rooms have been replaced by all-purpose rooms. They're not what they used to be. They don't need to be as large. And when you look for an office space, office building, I should say, when you look for an office building, it's best to go in and look for what amenities are in that building. And one of those amenities is the shared conference rooms. So rarely do people attend the attendance in conference rooms is greatly diminished because we're doing Zoom, virtual meetings, whatever it is. But the attendance in the rooms aren't that large. So you don't need a room that was, 16 by 24 square feet anymore. You don't need that. And when you do need that occasionally, that's when it's great to use the conference room of the office building. So that's why buildings are important. The landlords are important. Laying out the space is important. It's a lot more important than what the cost per square foot is, because you're gonna pay for it one way or the other.
No
So
doubt. So
that's
Mike,
a long way of saying what I do, I guess, isn't it?
well, what you do is a really valuable service for folks that, like you said, they're going to spend the next 7-10 years in that space, right? Till they either outgrow it, or, I mean, I know people, like you said, now it's about downsizing their space because a lot of remote work is happening, so they can have employees in other states. They don't necessarily have them all coming to the office anymore, right?
Right. And downsizing is one of the things I would tell people is it's a catch type of thing. I'd say, work with me and I'll get you a free BMW. And they say, well, you're going to get me a free BMW. And really what that is it's an anchor. I'm trying to let them understand how much money they can leave on the table when they negotiate a lease for themselves. Like, let's say the tenant's going to renegotiate their office lease. The lease expires and they're going to say, listen, I want to stay here where I am. It's fine. It's great. Okay, great. You can stay here. But when they negotiate with the landlord, they're at a great disadvantage. Once again, they don't know what the market is. And so when I sit down and I help tenants renegotiate their lease, what I explain to them is that BMW is basically you're leaving $5 a square foot on the table. And just a small user is 3,000 square feet. That's $15,000 a year. And a simple 5-year renewal, that's $75,000. That's your BMW. But my purpose of that is to have the person understand, what's at stake. And it's very fascinating that people don't realize it. They roll over there. We're very much like insurance agency or industry. People roll over their office leases without negotiating, just like they roll over their insurance policies without checking, other brokers and such like that, and other carriers. And when they roll over the lease, what usually happens is very fascinating. I go in and I'll speak to a person. Hey, maybe we should, negotiate your lease. And say, yeah, I think I'd like to do that. But you know what? The landlord's my friend. I go, oh, that's fascinating. Landlord's your friend? And I said, when was the last time you had him for dinner? He says, well, I never had him for dinner. I said, well, maybe they're not your friend. But really what they're saying to you is they're not saying about being familiar with anyone, but they're really cloaking as the fact that we don't like to negotiate. People like Americans, albeit that we feel we're good bargainers, we're good negotiators. No, we're not. Our efficiency, our economy is so efficient that we never grew up being negotiators. We didn't, everything
We
had a
didn't have
price.
to. We
No,
didn't have to. We have a
yeah.
natural marketplace that kind of keeps everybody in check and in range. So now it's less about the actual price because everybody's about the same cost, and it's more about what else comes with, right? So that's an interesting perspective on our culture.
Yeah, it's like, for example, you want a pair of jeans and you go to a mall. And what we used to do is say, okay, we went in and we'd look at Bloomingdale's, look at the jeans. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure about the price. So you go across the mall and you go into, I don't know, Pennies or whatever it is and say, and you can see the prices. It's very quick, very efficient. Or nowadays you take out your phone, you go to Amazon and you see what those jeans, it's a very efficient market. You're not negotiating for the price of jeans. We don't when we do that, that's why we're not good negotiators. And that's why people fear going into negotiations because it's very personal. When you negotiate, you're usually sitting, I would say, for the most part, when you get down to the nitty gritty, you're sitting across the table from someone. And what's there is lurking behind that psychology of everything is the fear of failure. No one wants to fail or feel that they failed. And the best negotiator is always able to have the other person feel like they won, because that makes them feel good and they all walk away feeling great and they won something. So that's always one of the things that I teach in negotiations is when you wrap things up, always make the other side feel like they won. And that's the best thing you could possibly do. I know
Mike,
I'm running around on all this,
no,
but
it's
what else
okay.
I can help you with?
It's okay. So we've gotten, I think, a good sense of what you do and the why, right? How you do and why you do what you do. But what about you? What would you do if you weren't doing, commercial real estate leasing? If you had it to do all of what would your passion be? What would you want to be doing if it weren't for what?
Hold on a second. Here's something. You can't see this, but
A football?
yeah, it's a football. This is New York Giants, 1963.
Oh,
I
wow.
would have
Now, is that Y.A. Tittle?
football coach. I just, it's not as scientific as people make it out to be on TV and such like that. And granted, we made
Mike,
a
is
lot of
that,
advancements in training, but I would have
Mike,
loved
is
to
that
have been a
what
football
is
coach.
Mike, is that Y.A. Tittle?
Oh, that's Tittle's age,
Right?
Gifford's age, Rosie
Right,
Greer.
Gifford?
Yeah, that was that was a very different era, very different time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so but if that's what I would have loved to have done. It was to be a coach. I find, I found that when I was a coach, sometimes I found it very rewarding.
Well, you kind of do that now.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's
You
very
kind of
true.
do.
It's and I'm going to tell you a secret about coaching.
Oh,
When you have a little league team, there's three types of players on your team. They're the kids that are so good that no matter what you tell them, what you do, or hey, they're gonna perform extraordinary. They're just talented. They're great. And the other end of the spectrum, the kids that they put their mid out and the ball hits them in the head. They're not very good. And then in the middle, they're good. They'll be okay, right? But what I used to do was I used to spend all my time with the kids that would get hit in the head with the ball and make them into better players, right? So in the beginning of the season, well, we lose some games because that's the way it is with some of those players, all right? But as we went on and we went into, the season wore on, we won more games and got into playoffs because the players that weren't good developed their skills because they spent time with them. And the other coaches wouldn't spend spit on them, you know. And so it was just it's just a strategy. Like if you spend time with people that really need that effort, that need the time, whether it's an office lease, whether it's your insurance broker, whether you're financial, if you spend that time, you can develop talent. You can, and that's what I used to appreciate was developing. I can't say they're talented, but helping these kids come along, and it paid off. We did well at the end of the season, not in the beginning of the season, but at the end of the season we did well.
Well, it also speaks to the human being that you are, right? So this is called the Ultimate Client Strategy Podcast. Any insights or thoughts about client relationships and maintaining long-term relationships? Because I know you have clients that have been with you for a long time that continue to come back and ask you over and over again to support their moves.
Well, it's a lot what you and Bruce do. It's providing continuous value. Now, when you sign a lease, most of my competitors is good luck and goodbye. Maybe I'll see you in 5, 10 years. But what I try to do is provide continuous value. If I, see anything or something that I think is going to help them, I'll send them an email. I'll call them up. I'll try to connect them. Networking. The networking provides that value. Like, you may speak to someone and say, yeah, that's like, for example, I have a law firm, great guys, very busy law firm, but they really need to have I think, more digital activity. Because for example, like, if you remember 2008, all lawyers became bankruptcy attorneys. Everyone
Right.
became bankruptcy attorney, very competitive. Today, it's trusts and estates because everyone's getting older. So every attorney's trusts and estates, and it's becoming very competitive. So one of the keys, what I find is, being out there, social media, and people don't really yet appreciate it. It's so rapidly changing that you can't even put your arms around it. So I'm trying to, like, for example, this one law firm, I keep bringing to them, opportunities for, social engagement, and it's clicking. But that's what the trick is. You always try to bring to extra, later. Like you don't say good luck and goodbye. You say, hey, listen, what is it? Happy trails to you until we meet again.
You're dating yourself.
I'm aging. But
The message is still the same, which is when you bring people
deliver, continue value. Like if you just remember the people, and they'll remember you. Right? Just get out there and just deliver extra value. And also, what people forget is I had a situation where we had a negotiation. It was difficult negotiations, and sometimes personalities get involved in it. And so I told, we were talking about it, and I went with my client, and I said, I tell you what you do, go get a bottle of wine. And the landlord happens to be in their office building. I said, go bring the landlord a bottle of wine. He goes, why? He goes, well, we negotiated 6 months ago. I said, that bottle of wine will have the greatest return on investment because then you remember the guy, you just say, you appreciate the guy or whatever for no reason. Do something good for no reason. And and I'm telling you, that paid off. That $30 bottle of wine probably saved him $3,000 over the course of a lease.
There you go.
It's the simple things. It's the things like who writes personal letters anymore? Who writes personal thank yous? No one. So you become exceptional. That you're exceptional, and that's really what we kind of like forgot. Sometimes is how to be exceptional is doing the little things.
I'm going to show you if you can see this right here on my desk.
Yeah.
So much. I always have thank you cards on my desk, and I send them when something's happened, right? Where I have a reason to say thank you instead of sending an email. I mean, I'll send text, I'll send quick things that are easy and fast just for appreciation, but I'll take, a minute to write that card. I send out 2 or 3 cards a week.
Yeah, it's just something, appreciation, recognition. That's,
I think people,
that's a secret. It shouldn't be a secret. It should be what everyone should do.
I think just going back to basics. I mean, you talked about football from a time that I wasn't around, but I'm not a sports enthusiast, so I wouldn't understand anyway. But I think the way people used to communicate, which was by handwritten notes and, expressions of appreciation and sitting and having a meal together and just getting to know people. We've lost so much of the art of communication, and it's interesting when you do something that used to be commonplace, everybody did it, but you do that now, and now you stand out.
Right.
Now
And talk about meals. It's one of the things what I try to do with my clients is get my clients to come together with one another. And I have, periodically I have a lunch with friends, and I invite like 5, 6, 7, 8 people together, my clients, and they're all in different practices, different businesses and such like that, to bring them together. And that also makes a very remarkable imprint on them. That's another little secret. The lunch with friends is very, very like we do it with, it's on Long Island and in the city and such like that once a month. Invaluable. You don't have to do it with 50 people like you guys do, but do it with a half a dozen every month, every other month. So that's another little secret. Lunch with friends is it's very powerful.
Absolutely. So Mike, it's been great. I'm so glad you're able to
Thank
join.
you.
So we're going to put all of your contact information in our posting so people will know how to reach you. Is there any particular way you prefer? Email, phone number?
It's probably my email. It's, I would think email it, probably the best, but but all my emails have my phone number on it too. So whatever, but an email is always I don't want to call it, but it's a paper trail, which is always very helpful. Makes life a little bit easier.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I thank you.
Bruce, do you have any last comments or thoughts?
No, listen, one thing I learned from now on, Mike's the coach. I'm going to call the coach. I'm going to call
a new nickname.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for,
Listen, thank you for being our guest today. Great story. You bring great value to the marketplace. All right. And we're going to work not to keep you a secret.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Be well
Thank you.
all and enjoy the day. And it's sunny out and it's starting to warm up.
There you go.